I, 28F, am getting married next month to my fiancé Frank, 30OM. We've been together for 5 years and I couldn't be happier. The issue is with my father, Jim, 52MM, who wants to walk me down the aisle. Some background. My parents divorced when I was 8. I remember the night clearly. There was a huge argument, doors slamming, and my mom, Debbie, 50F, crying in the kitchen. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew things would never be the same. My mom raised me as a single parent while my dad moved across the country for work. He claimed it was a great opportunity he couldn't pass up, but looking back, I think he was running away from his responsibilities. At first, Dad would call every week and promise to visit soon. I'd wait eagerly by the phone, counting down the days until his supposed visits. But the calls became less frequent, and the visits rarely materialized. Maybe once a year, if I was lucky, he'd show up with extravagant gifts and grand plans for the few days he was in town. But it always felt like he was trying to cram a year's worth of parenting into a long weekend. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. Dad had promised to fly in for it. I was so excited, telling all my friends that my dad was coming. Mom even helped me make a Welcome Home Dad banner. The day of my party came and he was a no-show. No call, no explanation. I spent half the party watching the door, hoping he'd surprise me. He finally called 2 days later with some excuse about work emergencies. It was the first time I realized I couldn't count on him. Phone calls became sporadic. He'd forget birthdays and important events. I spent many nights crying, wondering why my dad didn't seem to care about me. Mom tried her best to fill both roles, but I could see how exhausted she was, working long hours to make ends meet. When I was 14, my mom met Steve, 53M, at a community fundraiser. He was a widower with no children of his own. They started dating, and I was wary at first. I didn't want another dad to disappoint me. But Steve was different. He never tried to replace my dad, just offered to be there if I needed him. They dated for a couple of years before getting married when I was 16. During that time, Steve proved himself over and over. He came to all my school events, even the boring ones my mom couldn't make due to work. He taught me to drive, spending hours in parking lots as I nervously practiced. He helped me with my homework, especially math, which had always been a struggle for me. I remember one night, I had a huge project due the next day, and my computer crashed. I was in tears, thinking all my work was lost. Steve stayed up all night, trying to recover my files and then helping me recreate what we couldn't save. That's when I realized he truly cared. Meanwhile, my dad's contact became even less frequent. He'd send the occasional text on holidays, but that was it. When I made the honor roll, I excitedly texted him. His response? "That's nice." 2 words. Steve, on the other hand, took me out for ice cream and listened for hours as I talked about my classes and goals. I went to college out of state. My mom and Steve helped me move in, sent care packages, visited often. My dad promised to come see my dorm, but never did. Each parents' weekend, I'd scan the crowd hoping to see him. But he was always absent. During my junior year, I had a health scare. They found a lump in my breast. It turned out to be benign, but those few weeks of waiting and tests were terrifying. Steve drove 6 hours to be with me for my biopsy, holding my hand throughout the procedure. My dad sent a "hope you're okay" text after it was all over. My dad didn't attend my graduation either, claiming work was too busy. I saw other dads hugging their daughters, taking proud photos, and felt a pang of sadness. But then I saw Steve, cheering loudly as I walked across the stage. He had tears in his eyes and hugged me so tightly afterwards. "I'm so proud of you, kiddo," he said. Those words meant everything. After college, I moved back home and got a job at a local marketing firm. That's when I met Frank. He was a new hire in the IT department, and we hit it off immediately. Our first date was supposed to be dinner and a movie, but we ended up talking for hours at the restaurant and missed the film entirely. Frank got along great with my mom and Steve from the start. He understood my complicated feelings about my dad and never pushed me to reconnect if I wasn't ready. Frank lost his own father to cancer when he was young, so he appreciated the relationship I had with Steve. After dating for 4 years, Frank proposed. It was perfect. He took me back to the restaurant where we had our first date. He had the chef hide the ring in my dessert. Frank got down on one knee, told me I was his best friend and the love of his life, and asked me to marry him. Through happy tears, I said yes. Frank had asked Steve's blessing before proposing, which meant the world to me. Steve's not my biological father, but he's been there for every important moment of my life since he came into it. He's shown me what a dad should be. Now, to the current issue. I called my dad last month to tell him about the engagement. To be honest, I almost didn't. but I felt obligated to at least inform him. He seemed excited and immediately said he couldn't wait to walk me down the aisle. I was stunned into silence for a moment. When I found my voice, I told him I actually wanted Steve to do it, since he's been more of a father to me. My dad flipped out. He started yelling about how he's my real father and it's his right to walk me down the aisle. He claimed he always loved me and tried his best, but work kept him away. I felt years of hurt and resentment bubbling up. I told him his best wasn't good enough. Where was he when I was sick? When I graduated? When I needed fatherly advice or support? I said Steve earned the honor of walking me down the aisle by actually being there for me, day in and day out. My dad has been blowing up my phone ever since, alternating between guilt-tripping me and angrily demanding to walk me down the aisle. He's sent long messages about how I'm betraying him, how I'll regret this decision for the rest of my life. He even called my mom to try to get her to convince me, but she's on my side. Some extended family members, mostly on my dad's side, are saying I should let my dad do it to keep the peace. My aunt told me I'm being selfish and that it's a daughter's duty to honor her father. But I feel like that would be a slap in the face to Steve, who has been an amazing father figure to me. Walking me down the aisle isn't a right. It's a privilege that my dad didn't earn. Frank supports whatever I decide, but says I seem happier with Steve walking me down the aisle. I agree, but the family drama is stressing me out. I'm worried my dad might try to cause a scene at the wedding. Part of me wants to uninvite him, but I know that would only escalate things. I'm standing firm in my decision to have Steve walk me down the aisle. He's earned it. But I can't help feeling guilty. Like maybe I am being selfish. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my mostly absent father walk me down the aisle in favor of my stepdad who actually raised me? Update 1. Thank you all for the supportive comments. Reading them helped reinforce that I'm not crazy for feeling this way about my dad. I decided to meet up with my dad in person to hash things out. We met at a coffee shop last weekend. As soon as I saw him, I was struck by how much older he looked. The last time I'd seen him in person was 3 years ago at my cousin's wedding. He had more gray in his hair now and looked tired. We sat down, and for a moment neither of us knew what to say. Finally, I broke the silence. I told him I understood he was hurt, but that he needed to see things from my perspective. I reminded him of all the times he wasn't there. Missed birthdays, school events, holidays. How he'd make promises to visit but constantly cancel last minute. I brought up specific moments. The 10th birthday party he missed, the father-daughter dance in middle school where Steve stood in, my high school graduation where his seat was empty. With each example, I could see him becoming more defensive. My dad interrupted me, insisting he did his best given the circumstances. He said his job was demanding, but that he always loved me. He talked about how hard he worked to provide for me financially, sending checks to my mom every month. I pointed out that love isn't just about money, it's shown through actions. And his actions, or lack thereof, spoke volumes. He tried to justify his absences, talking about important meetings and work emergencies, but I asked him why, in 20 years, he couldn't make time for the important moments in my life. Why other dads managed to balance work and family, but he couldn't. He didn't have an answer for that. I also brought up how Steve stepped up and became the father figure I needed. How he never tried to replace my dad, but filled the role my dad left vacant. I told him about Steve teaching me to drive, helping with homework, coming to every school event. How Steve was there for me during my health scare in college. My dad scoffed at this, saying Steve was just playing house with my mom and me. That made my blood boil. I told him Steve didn't just play at being a dad. He actually showed up and put in the work. That it's easy to claim the title of father, but much harder to earn it. The conversation got heated. My dad accused me of being vindictive and trying to hurt him by choosing Steve. He said I was disrespecting him and our family's heritage by not letting him walk me down the aisle. I explained this wasn't about hurting him. It was about honoring the man who truly raised me. My dad then tried guilt-tripping me, saying he'd be humiliated in front of the whole family if he didn't walk me down the aisle. That everyone would judge him for it. I stood firm and said that was a consequence of his own actions. That he couldn't neglect his role as a father for years and then demand the privileges of the role when it suited him. He brought up his own father, my grandfather, who had also been distant. He talked about how he had forgiven him and taken care of him in his old age. The implication was clear. He expected me to do the same for him, but I told him I'm not him, and I'm not obligated to repeat his choices. In the end, we reached an impasse. My dad stormed out, saying I'd regret this decision, that someday, when I had kids of my own, I'd understand and feel guilty for treating him this way. I was shaking as he left, a mix of anger and sadness washing over me. I sat there for a while after he left, trying to process everything. A part of me felt guilty, wondering if I was being too harsh. But a larger part felt relieved, like I'd finally said all the things I'd been holding in for years. I called Steve afterwards and thanked him for everything he's done for me. I told him about the conversation with my dad and how it made me appreciate Steve even more. He got choked up and said he was honored to walk me down the aisle, that he couldn't love me more if I was his biological daughter. The wedding is in 3 weeks. My dad is still invited, but I made it clear he needs to respect my decision if he attends. I'm not sure if he'll come. Part of me hopes he does, that maybe he'll see Steve walk me down the aisle and finally understand what he missed out on. But another part of me is worried he'll try to cause a scene. I'm trying to focus on the joy of marrying Frank and not let this drama overshadow things. My mom and Steve have been incredibly supportive through all of this. Frank has been my rock, listening to me vent and assuring me that I'm making the right choice. I'll update again after the wedding. Thanks again for all the kind words and advice. It's helped more than you know. Update 2. The wedding was last weekend and it was a roller coaster of emotions. The ceremony was beautiful, but there was drama I hadn't anticipated. The day started wonderfully. I got ready with my mom, my bridesmaids, and Frank's sister. There were happy tears as I put on my dress, a gorgeous A-line gown with lace detailing that made me feel like a princess. My mom helped me with my veil, her hands shaking slightly as she told me how proud she was of the woman I'd become. Steve came to the bridal suite before the ceremony. When he saw me in my dress, he teared up. "You look beautiful, kiddo," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He hugged me carefully, mindful of my dress and makeup. That moment right there confirmed I'd made the right choice in having him walk me down the aisle. The ceremony was set to start at 4 p.m. At 3:55, as I was preparing to walk down the aisle with Steve, my dad showed up. He stumbled in, clearly drunk, demanding to speak with me. My heart sank. I'd hoped he wouldn't cause a scene, but it seemed that was too much to ask. My bridesmaids tried to keep him out of the bridal suite, but he pushed past them. When he saw me with Steve, his face contorted with anger. He started yelling about how I was disrespecting him, that I'd regret this. Steve stepped between us, trying to calm him down. I was shaking, torn between anger and heartbreak. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and my father was ruining it. My mom came in, having heard the commotion. She managed to convince my dad to step outside with her. I could hear them arguing outside. My mom telling him he needed to leave, that he was embarrassing himself. My dad's voice, slurred but angry, insisting he had a right to be there. I was on the verge of tears, my carefully applied makeup in danger of running. Steve put his hands on my shoulders, looking me in the eye. "This changes nothing," he said firmly. "I'm still walking you down that aisle. Don't let him ruin this day for you." His calm presence centered me. I took a deep breath and nodded. We delayed the ceremony by 15 minutes to deal with the situation. My uncle finally managed to convince my dad to sit down, promising him a chance to talk to me at the reception if he behaved. I wasn't thrilled about that promise, but I was willing to agree to almost anything to salvage my wedding at that point. Finally, the music started. Steve offered me his arm, and we began our walk down the aisle. I could feel my dad's eyes on me, but I refused to look his way. Instead, I focused on Frank, waiting for me at the altar with a smile that lit up his whole face. The rest of the ceremony went smoothly. Frank and I exchanged heartfelt vows that left not a dry eye in the house. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Frank dipped me for a kiss that had everyone cheering. At the reception, I tried to enjoy myself despite the tension. Frank and I had our first dance to Perfect by Ed Sheeran, twirling around the dance floor like we were the only two people in the world. The father-daughter dance was next. Steve and I swayed to Daughters by John Mayer. Halfway through, I saw my dad storming out of the reception hall. Later, during dinner, my dad cornered me while Frank was talking to some guests. He slurred that I had humiliated him and that I was ungrateful for everything he'd done for me. I told him he was making a fool of himself and needed to leave. He got in my face, jabbing his finger at me. The smell of alcohol on his breath was overwhelming. Steve saw what was happening and quickly intervened, putting himself between us. My dad tried to take a swing at Steve, but was so drunk he lost his balance. He fell into a table, knocking over the wedding cake. There was a collective gasp from the guests. Frank rushed over and he and Steve escorted my dad out. Security made sure he left the premises. I was shaken up, but determined not to let it ruin the day. My mom helped me clean up and fix my makeup. We got a sheet cake from a nearby grocery store as a replacement. The rest of the reception was wonderful. We laughed during the toasts and danced the night away with our loved ones. As Frank and I left the reception under a shower of rose petals, I felt a mix of emotions. Joy at marrying the love of my life, gratitude for Steve and my mom, and a lingering sadness about my dad. But mostly, I felt hopeful for the future. I haven't heard from my dad since. Part of me is sad that things ended this way, but mostly I'm angry that he tried to ruin my wedding day. I'm so grateful for my chosen family. My mom, Steve, Frank, and all our amazing friends who rallied around us. Frank and I leave for our honeymoon tomorrow. I'm looking forward to putting this drama behind us and starting our new life together. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since the wedding. Frank and I are settling into married life and things are going well overall. We just bought our first house and are slowly furnishing it. It's a fixer-upper, but we're enjoying the process of making it our own. Frank has become quite the handyman, though we did have to call a plumber after his attempt to fix the kitchen sink went awry. I got a letter from my dad last week. It was the first contact since the wedding fiasco. I was hesitant to open it at first, leaving it on the counter for a couple of days before curiosity got the better of me. He wrote that he's been in rehab for the past few months. Apparently, he's been struggling with alcoholism for years, which he claims contributed to his absence in my life. He apologized for his behavior at the wedding and for not being there for me growing up. The letter was long, detailing his struggles with addiction and how it affected his ability to be a father. He talked about how seeing Steve walk me down the aisle was a wake-up call for him. He realized how much he had missed out on and how his actions had pushed me away. He said he's been working on himself and wants to make amends if I'm willing to give him a chance. At the end of the letter, he asked if we could meet up to talk when he finishes his program next month. He said he'd understand if I refused, but hoped I'd consider it. I'm conflicted. Part of me wants to hear him out, to see if he's genuinely changed. But I'm also wary of letting him back into my life. I've been hurt so many times before, and the wedding incident is still fresh in my mind. I talked it over with Frank, and he said he'd support whatever I decide, but warned me to be cautious. He reminded me that I don't owe my dad anything and that my well-being should come first. I called Steve to get his perspective. He was quiet for a moment before saying that addiction is a terrible disease, but it doesn't excuse my dad's behavior. He reminded me that I don't owe my dad anything, but said it might provide some closure to hear what he has to say. Steve offered to go with me if I decide to meet up with my dad, which I really appreciate. I'm still undecided. The rational part of me thinks I should at least hear him out. People can change, and maybe rehab has helped him realize his mistakes. But emotionally, I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive him for everything. I've been doing well without him in my life and worry about disrupting that peace. There's also a part of me that's angry. Why now? Why did it take him embarrassing himself at my wedding to finally seek help? I can't help but wonder if this is just another false start. Another round of broken promises. For now, I told my dad I need time to think about it. I wrote him a short letter saying I received his note and appreciated his apology, but that I needed space to process everything. I said I'd contact him when I was ready, if I decided to meet. I'm focusing on my marriage and our new home for now. Frank and I are planning a housewarming party next month, and I'm excited to have our friends and family, including Mom and Steve, over to see the place. If I do decide to meet with my dad, it will be on my terms. I'm not going to let his issues derail the life I've built for myself. I've learned that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being and happiness. That's where things stand for now. I'm taking it one day at a time and trying not to let the situation overwhelm me. I'm grateful for the support system I have in Frank, my mom, Steve, and my friends. Whatever happens with my dad, I know I have people in my corner who truly care about me. Thanks for following along with my story. I appreciate all the support and advice I've received here. It's been helpful to have a place to share my thoughts and feelings throughout this journey.